This section of the presentation is going to focus on the Sleuth Kit's tools, demonstrating how to use them and explaining what it is exactly that they are doing. So this section is going to demonstrate a lot of what I learned from researching and testing these tools that exist in the Sleuth Kit. So for demonstrating, I'm going to use 3 different partition image examples in order to demonstrate these 5 tools that exist in the Sleuth Kit. So these partition images are much smaller than full disk images, and so they're usually a lot simpler to kind of investigate. And with these tools, it's going to provide a good introductory lesson to just kind of getting started with the tools that the Sleuth Kit offers without having a whole bunch of information thrown in your face that would come from a much bigger disk image. So to get started with the first example is going to be named scavenger.img, and we're going to start off with this istat tool. So the istat tool is always a good starting point for investigating a disk image because it's going to provide you with some very basic and general information on the disk image file that you are investigating. And so looking at this output, you're going to have it tell you that your image type is raw, your size in bytes, and your sector size, which 512 is pretty standard for a hard drive. So this all looks good. And so if we go ahead and just practice that here, do image stat, and then the name of the disk image. So it's a very simple, basic command. You do the name of the tool and then the name of the actual disk image, and then you just have to hit enter on that, and you'll get the exact same information that was seen in this output. So that's good, it means it's working and that it was done correctly. And so to the next tool is the fsstat tool, which is very similar to the image-stat tool, except this time instead of providing general information or statistics on your disk image, it's going to be on your file system. So with a partition image, I'm going to request that the Sleuth Kit only return the file system type to me, because with a partition image, you're going to get a lot of file system information that's just a whole lot of not really needed information. Even like the file system type isn't all that necessary, but I mean, it's just good information to have, and it's good like introductory practice with the tool, because every little piece matters. Every little piece is going to be used to build evidence in an investigation. And so at least knowing what file system type you're working with is always a good like piece of the puzzle to have, even if you don't use it in a future like tool or anything like that. So the requesting the specific file system type only is going to use this option or argument -t, which essentially tells the Sleuth Kit, hey, please just return the file system type to me. So if you type this in with the option and then just again do the name of the disk image and you hit enter, you'll get that same output. That FAT12 is our file system type. So if we move on, we're going to get to the FLS tool, which is the file list. So essentially what this is going to do is display a list of the file system from the disk image, and this is going to include your files and your directories. Without a specified location, the FLS tool defaults to the root directory of the disk image or the file system when there's no inode value. And so the inode value are these values here between the file type and the name of the file. These are unique numbers that identify the location of the file in the file system. So these inode values are very important because they do become necessary to use with future tools. So it's very important to note these and take notice of them And as you can see here, an asterisk typically means that it's a file that's been deleted, or in other words, it's an unallocated file. Ones without the asterisk are allocated files. So if we wanted to run this command, we'll do the fls and then do the name of the disk image. You'll hit enter and you'll get that same list that was seen here. So to kind of dive deeper into this, if you did the fls and then the name of the disk image and then put, say, the inode value 3, which is for the directory titled A, you're going to get the file list of that specific directory. So you can see in here there's only images. There's 3 images and we can't really tell what they are. We can't see them. We can just see their name and what kind of file type they are. And that's pretty much all the information, and the inode values, of course. The /r and or the r/r and the d/d, those just tell you that like the d/d means it's a directory. The r/r just means it's a regular file. And so it's important to note that using the fls command will not work on just a regular file. So if we tried, say we'll do 517, it's not going to do anything. It can only list directories, which, makes sense. This will not work on just an r/r file. This has to be for d/d. And so we can go ahead and just kind of list all the directories that we want on here if we so desired. So, we'll do 3, 4, and 5, and we'll see that there's really only images contained in these directories. So we'll go ahead and hop back over here and we'll move on to the istat tool. So the istat tool is very important for getting some valuable metadata. So as you can see here, the istat tool will display metadata structures of a specified file directory. So this is where that inode value becomes important, because the inode value is going to be needed for this command, because you have to specify to the Sleuth Kit what file it is you want the metadata structures from. So we're going to go ahead and just do this command, which will be the istat scavenger.img, and then we'll just go ahead and stick to 3 and we'll get those metadata structures. So we'll see that the directory entry is 3. We'll see it is an allocated file, which we know because there's not an asterisk next to it. And then in the FLS segment, we can see that it's a directory, which again we already know from the d/d information. See the size and then the name. But the important piece here is the directory entry times, which are essentially just timestamps. So we can see when the file was created, when it was last written to, and when it was last accessed. So there isn't really any variation on this file as far as the timestamps. The written and the created are within the exact same time and day. The access is within the same day, but for some reason doesn't really have a timestamp, unless, that's supposed to mean like midnight. But this directory has not really been touched in a long, long time. So that's about all the information we get out of that. Our final tool is going to be the TSK recover tool. Now this is probably one of the most important tools that the Sleuth Kit offers. It will literally recover all the files on a disk images file system, and it will dump it into an output directory on your local computer's file system, and then you're free to look through the files as if it is your own directory on your computer, which is a really neat tool that the Sleuth Kit has. So one thing to note here is that the output directory, that the Sleuth Kit will create it for you, but you do have to specify a name for it in order for the command to work. If you do not specify a name for the directory, the command won't work. It'll give you an error telling you, hey, you need to tell me what to name this. It is also a requirement in this tool to use an option. And so these options, well, the option is either you can specify to recover all the files, both allocated and unallocated, or you can specify to only recover allocated files. So if we return to the command line and we do the recover, we got to specify, we're going to do -E, which means to recover all the files. And then we're going to do the name of the image, and then we're going to do a name for the output directory. So I'll use a different one than that. So I'll just do like recovery1. So if you hit enter, we're going to see that this command worked because it's telling us that 9 files were recovered, which is good. That means that we typed it in all incorrectly and that the Sleuth Kit was successful in being able to recover those files. So that's about all that we'll get in that output. This is where we'd have to go and look at the actual file system on our local computer, and we can see here that it did in fact create that directory. And so if we go ahead and click inside of this directory that the Sleuth Kit created for us, you can see that these other directories we saw listed previously in the command line environment, this A, B, and C directories, are visible now, and we can click into them and out of them as if they're regular files and directories. And so we can see all these images are here, the ones that we saw listed. We couldn't see what they were, we could just see their names, but now we can actually view them. So we can just click on that, it'll open the image, you can close it. It looks like all of these images are of planes. This is a very, very neat tool that you can use in the Sleuth Kit. And as you can see here, this is where the disk or partition image is, scavenger.img. Here are a couple of the other examples I'll use later. And it dumped the output directory into my current working directory, which is again where the partition image is, and you can just click in and you can just view to your heart's desire. So that pretty much sums up like the investigation outline for this partition image. Like I said earlier, the partition images are typically small, so they, don't offer a whole lot, but they do provide kind of a good entry level of what exactly you can do with these tools. So next I'll go ahead and pull another one of these partition images to run through the same commands with, just to showcase using the same steps but with a different case with different context. So these 3 images are all partition images, and this one is a full disk image that I'll use in a later example, but for now I'll just go ahead and pull this 4.img. So we'll go ahead and run the image statistics on it, and we'll see a lot of the same information. It's a raw image type. The size is bigger than the previous image, and the sector size is the same. So then we'll go ahead and run the file system statistics, remembering that we want to use that -T option just to get the file system type, because it's really the only valuable information to us at this point. So we'll go ahead and run that, and we'll see that it is a FAT12 file system type, just like the previous partition image. So from this point, we're going to want to list the files. We will do the command and the name of the disk image, and we can see in this one that there aren't really any directories. All the files seem to be a PNG file. They're all just regular files. And again, we just want to really want to note those inode values, because without those we wouldn't be able to get any metadata structures of the files. So we'll go ahead and get a metadata structure of one of these PNG files. That will be the istat command using the name of the file. Don't want to use the one from the previous example. And then we'll want to note that inode value. So we'll go ahead and do photo 4. So that's going to be inode value 6. There's just a lot of sectors that this image is That's not really what we're going to focus on though. So we can see the directory entry is 6. It's allocated, which we know. It's a file, which we also know. We know, verify the name. And we can see the timestamps on this. So the timestamps for this one are just a little bit more interesting. The file was created and written to in March of 2015, but we can see it was accessed in October of this year, 2020. So that means somebody had looked at this photo fairly recently. And so in an investigation, that could potentially be something you'd want to document for the case, especially if you're building a timeline for the investigation. This is where this command or this tool is super useful and provides this valuable information. Now we'll just want to go ahead and recover the files. So we'll do that tsk recover command again with the name. We're going to want to remember to say like what extent we want the files recovered. So we're going to do all of them. Going to do the name of the partition image, and then to remember to name the output directory. So we'll just do recovery 2 for this one. Go ahead and run that. Again, we were successful, which is good. So if we go back here, we'll see recovery 2 is also now visible. And so again, we can just go ahead and hop into this directory, and we will see all those photos that we saw listed previously right here. We can click on them again, they'll open, they'll show us whatever it is that's contained in them, and you can look through these, and then you would decide what kind of evidence you want to document. Does it provide any leads? Does it provide anything incriminating? That is up to the investigator to find out. Now we have recovered 2 different file systems, and so we'll move on to the last and final one, which is this river.img. So we'll go ahead and clear, and we'll use this rivers. Again, just start with that introductory step, the image statistics, .img, raw image type, size and bytes, sector size, all the same. We'll go ahead and get the file system to stats, do the -t, do the name, and see what we got. FAT12. So the 3 partition images are the same file system types across the board, which is kind of to be expected. So we'll go ahead and see what kind of files we got going on in this partition image by listing them. And we can see off the bat that we actually have a deleted file or unallocated file that has been named mail.txt. So that might be something of interest in an investigation. That's definitely gonna be something worth investigating in this example. We're gonna hope that that one gets recovered in the recovery phase or in the recovery step, and it can be something we can look at. If we wanted to, we could get the metadata of that specific file. So we'll want to make sure we do this correctly. So we'll do that, and we'll put that 3 inode value. So this is kind of important, I guess, to note, is that you can get the metadata structure of an unallocated file as well. So it's going to tell you that it's not allocated. It's going to tell you kind of the same information, what directory entry it is, what kind of file attribute it has, the size of it, and the name. And then we can see those timestamps again. In this example, we see that it was created, written, and accessed all on the same day, but the access just doesn't have a timestamp like the written and created do. That's about all that information that we can get from there. So again, we'll just do a recovery. We're going to want to make sure we get all of them this time, because we don't want to just get the allocated in this example, because we see that there is an unallocated file that is piquing our interest to look into. So we'll go ahead and get that, and we'll just do this as recovery 3. So we can see again it was successful, 6 files were recovered, and now we have that recovery 3 deposited into the local computer file system. And this is where we're going to be excited to jump into the directory. So just real quick, we'll see that there are some images. These might be important to look at before examining the file, the text file that we're interested in, because maybe there's some kind of clue or evidence with these that would be important in the text file. So just seems like images of rivers. So we'll go ahead and open this text file, and you can just click it and open it. And we can see here that there is actually what many may call a secret message. And so we would document that and look into that as necessary, add it to the timeline if needed, look into these images to see what kind of references it is making. And that is kind of the beauty of the TSK Recover tool, is just kind of being able to do stuff like that. Like you were able to just recover a deleted file of a computer file system and be able to explore all their secrets. So that pretty much concludes like using the partition images for examples. And so next we'll move on to a full disk image